Ok,
¿Sí?
todo bien. We
Listo.
are we are live here. Just double
Great.
checking here. Okay, excellent. Well, okay, thank you everybody for joining us. We're back. This is our second presidential candidate. What's the story there with the whole running for president?
So last year, I decided that, like the intellectual sphere of the Guatemalan presidential campaign was very mediocre. And especially because we had a crisis in 2015 where we overthrown the government. And I thought that if in this 2019 elections, there were not, there was not going to be like a bar raised on the issues that should be discussed, maybe the young people would, go back into the apathy that we are so used to in Guatemala.
I was looking for a short answer because I haven't actually told our audience who's joined us right now on the show.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Gloria Alvarez is our guest today. She
Hey,
she is a libertarian thinker and has written. How many books have you written at this point?
three.
3 books. Excellent. Her latest one, I think, is
Yes.
the one I have. I actually I left it on the airplane, um, but it's called "Cómo hablar como un conservador," or
See, how to talk
yeah,
to a conservative
how to talk with a conservative or how to talk like a conservative.
with a conservative.
With a conservative. Okay, that's right.
Yes.
Um, okay, so getting back here, so Gloria apparently ran for president, but since we don't know all the details in Guatemala, there was an overthrow of the government in 2015,
Yes.
and go ahead. So what? So
So yeah, after 2015, something similar of what happened in the Arab Spring or in Brazil after the overthrow of Dilma Rousseff, that spirit of like, feeling that the citizenship was doing something good to change the government, that was the spirit. But in 2019, all the candidates that could run, because I couldn't run, because I don't have the age that the Constitution requires, and also because the political parties are the only monopolies that you can access power in Guatemala. There's no such thing as independent candidacies. But nevertheless, what I did is like I posted a YouTube video saying that that was going to be my campaign. So it was going to be the cheapest, most ecological, 100% libertarian presidential campaign ever to exist in Guatemala. And it has 15 different proposals, of which 5 are like non-negotiable, and the other 10 were for people to decide 5. And so what I wanted with that was like to raise the bar of the discussion of subjects that I knew that normal candidates were not going to discuss, and that I think are super needed in Guatemala in order to really change things from within.
excellent. So we're still waiting for the official campaign. Then we're still.
Yes. Well, what I'm gonna do is, on the next elections, I'm still not the age because you have to be 40, and I am 35 right now. So for the next elections, I'm 38.
I didn't ask.
But what I'm trying to, no, it's fine. I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't mind. As a Guatemalan singer says, it's better to live your, ¿cómo es? No le quite años a la vida, póngale vida a los años. So don't take years out of your life, put life into your years. That's better. But the thing is that what I'm trying to create is a demand for libertarian ideas. Because if no one votes for these ideas, then it doesn't matter if you have, candidates that propose them.
Well, your ideas are doing very well in Latin America. I mean, I have friends from Mexico City that sent me your videos on Messenger just even a week ago, and I said, "Oh, well, actually, she's going to be a guest on the show." You were definitely one of the guests that
That's
we
great.
wanted to have on. I saw you on Kibby on Liberty. I think that's where I became aware of you, and I really liked everything you had to say. I'd never heard of you, and then I got obviously excited. I thought you were Mexican when I was listening to all your things, and then I was excited to find out that you went to Francisco Marroquin,
Yeah.
And we should tell the audience here, because what we do here is we teach praxeology. And if you want to have a degree in praxeology, there's really only two universities in the world that you can get a degree in Austrian economics. So
Yes.
yeah, you went to one of them, although I think you don't have that particular degree, right?
No, I don't have that degree, but it doesn't matter what you study in UFM. It'd be medicine or economics or international affairs, as I did, and political science. There are mandatory courses where you have to have economic process 1, 2, and 3 semesters. Then you have higher economics as another semester, and then you have Ludwig von Mises philosophy. And we also have, courses in logic, on praxeology that are like independent. So by the time that you graduate, you do get an idea of what praxeology really is. And then, of course, you can go for that specific degree.
Yes. And so uh, before I ask you about kind of current event things and practical libertarianism, um, I want to ask you, because I heard in some of your interviews that you talked a lot about public choice theory, which would be more like Chicago School, right? Chicago School of Economics and stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you think about praxeology as a person who is familiar with human action and Ludwig von Mises and all of that?
Well, actually, I am more of a fan of the Austrian economics because of the process of understanding spontaneous order and human action. And as the years go by, I have, distanced myself from that monetary view, especially because last year I had the opportunity of attending an event called Alamos Alliance. So in Alamos Alliance, all the former Chicago boys get together once a year to discuss monetary policy. And when I was there and listening to them, I realized, no, I think I'm more Austrian. I think that there are certain levels of compromise that, for example, were made in the experiment in Chile with some of the public policies that sadly now are getting reversed because the monetary policies were understood in the context of the Chicago boys, but not a lot of work was done with understanding the human action, the praxeology of economics. And this is something that Axel Kaiser explains really well in his book about how the elites of Chile, they dedicated themselves to making money, but not in creating the culture that will actually embrace free markets and cooperation.
Who is this? This is which Kaiser?
Axel Kaiser.
Axel Kaiser.
Yes, he's
Yes,
a Chilean a lawyer and author.
I've heard you talk about him in some other podcast or something.
Yes.
So you find yourself, you now identify as an Austrian libertarian?
Yes, I actually,
Okay.
well, I'm a weird mix of things because I'm also getting a postgraduate in objectivist philosophy, which has also like served me into, organizing my ideas from the metaphysical, the epistemological perspective that sometimes only with the level of economics and pragmatism you don't get the communicational skills in order to spread these ideas, especially to people who are not experts on these topics. So I would say that I am a minarchist libertarian with a lot of interest in objectivism that is more on the side of Austrian economics. So
Yeah.
I separate myself more from anarcho-capitalism and from the school of Chicago and the traditional monetary policy, just because what I've seen in practice in Latin America is that it inevitably ends up making compromises in between real free market and what they would call, good politics in order to stay in power.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't be an anarcho-capitalist, a real pure anarcho-capitalist, if you were running for president, I think. But
Exactly.
but but hell, even I've considered running for some political office in my local area because I want to make a difference, and there's things that I think I could practically implement to keep it the way that I like it, rather than letting it change. Right now, where there's so much political upheaval in the world, I mean, with things as simple as like no one's cleaning up the Black Lives Matter graffiti, and stuff like that. And so those kind of rules and stuff like that. So could you tell us when you read Human Action? Do you remember the year?
Yeah, it was 2004. I was 20 years old 19 years old, second year of college. And what they would do is we would have, because the beauty of Francisco Marroquin is that they had the Socratic method. So instead of the Montessori method, where like the teacher it's standing and giving class, most of our classes were Socratic. So it was about like reading one chapter at a time and then sitting down, and the professor would ask you, so why do you agree with this, why? And actually for me, when I entered Marroquin, I didn't know that it was like this, libertarian haven. I just chose it because they had the career that I wanted to study. So I would all the time be questioning. It was very hard for me to understand how like free market economics and human action and spontaneous order would implicitly make lives better. So I would make questions like, so wait a minute, you're telling me that if Paris Hilton is in Los Angeles and she's buying a 50,000 diamond necklace, if Paris now is going to have an impact in the poor kid in a Guatemalan village who is dying of diarrhea because he and his family doesn't have 50 cents for a pill that would cure that. Like that in my head, I didn't understand. And so by studying Mises and describing also, the dangers of authoritarianism and how good intentions always go into disastrous ideas, and how we cannot plan because there's no ground into planning. There's no way that we can have all the information accessible. Then is when I understood, okay, actually free market means every single individual committing to a way of being responsible of their own finances, which of course is a challenge, especially in a region like Latin America. So still when I read Mises and I was, with all these ideas, I understood, okay, this could work in a post World War II Europe, but I don't see how we can do this in Latin America. I was still very skeptical, like many people are, with a lot of arrogance, I would say, to think there are a lot of people who are not ready to be free. There are a lot of people who wouldn't know how to handle their freedom, let alone their own wallets, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So you read it very early. You definitely beat me on that. And I thought I was early on reading Human Action myself, but I think I read it in 2007 for the first time. Although we're reading it again now on this channel. We're my sister and I were reading through it and having discussions or whatever. Mises himself was a minarchist. That's what he thought of himself. So I guess so far so good. You can be, you have that kind of that practicalness that Mises had when it came to basically saying classical liberal thoughts or what I want implemented in the world or whatever. But to ask you specifically, so I asked this question from a friend of mine that was also a guest on the show. I asked him, this particular channel, which is not the biggest channel on YouTube, but we've had close to 10,000, give or take, at any given time, and 10,000 followers, and the Mises Institute is bigger than ever. But I haven't seen praxeology specifically take on like more importance as a term, and obviously the ideas that it's tied to. Which is that it's all tied back to the individual and back to human action. Do you have any ideas why those particular things have not caught on? Is it because a lot of the conclusions kind of go against public policy, or is it, or you think that the word sounds kind of esoteric, or what do you think?
I think it's both. I mean, if you say praxeology in Latin America, people are like, what do you eat that with? You know what I mean? It was like, what? They are more familiar with Keynesianism and Lord Maynard Keynes than they would ever be with Mises or Hayek. And yeah, I agree with you. There's an Argentinian economist, Javier Milei, who says, of course, the ideas that are going to prosper in our societies are the ones that give the bureaucrats all the power to spend all the money and control absolutely everything. So something like praxeology is not going to be pushed by the same people that would get out of a job and out of power by pursuing those ideas. Now, at the same time, I think it's quite complex sometimes to understand individual freedom if you go through like the harsh study of economics. And that's why I think, for example, the marvelous work of Henry Hazlitt in Economics in One Lesson, which is like, like this little summary that would get you at least in the tips of what praxeology. And also, for example, Leonard Reed with iPencil, making a narrative and storytelling about how is that this human action works, and how is it like divided. So I think it's both those things, and also to Mises not to change the essence, but to put it available to audiences that traditionally won't get this at university or school. And I think that examples of that have been what they have done with Ayn Rand's work, or Frederic Bastiat, or even making cartoons about, the road to serfdom. There's a marvelous rap in YouTube. I don't know if you have watched it, between Hayek versus Keynes, and then they did one of Mises versus Marx, right? And when you see it like in that format, it makes all the sense. But I think it's both those things. If you go and say, oh yeah, I think that praxeology is the way to go, people are going to be like, what are you talking about? But if you say like, free market economics and individual freedom and spontaneous order, I think it will be more understandable. Now, let me tell you something. It's been, wow, almost 12 years since I last read Human Action, and I actually have to go back to it. I went back to Mises for the anti-capitalist mentality.
That's one of my favorite books.
I read a lot of it for my, yeah, it's timeless. It's what's happening right now, and you're like, wow, it never gets out of fashion.
Do you think, coming from an objectivist perspective, I guess you lean more towards Ayn Rand as your kind of personal guru, right? Am I right in saying that?
Yes, in a personal sense. So what I believe that, and I've been doing a series with the Ayn Rand Institute called Exploring Objectivism, coming from the libertarian side, which is, like a breakthrough, because Ayn Rand was very mad with the libertarians of her time. And I know also of like stories that no one has confirmed or denied, of Mises praising the work of Ayn Rand, saying that, because of her novels, more people were in touch of these ideas, and that was something that was not that popular in the Montpelleran society. I do see a lot of similarities between the work of Mises and Rand, more than I would see between, I don't know, Rothbard and Hayek, for instance. But what I say to the way that I approach objectivism is like, okay, a personal philosophy that inspires me to be a better professional at communicating ideas, because it gives me marvelous tools in order to, put the message out there. But objectivism holds that you are to be the best hero that you can become of yourself. Whereas libertarians are like, no, like just live and let live. It doesn't matter if you don't achieve to be this John Galt or a Howard Rourke. So my perspective towards the rest of people is that I won't hold the same standards of excellency that I would hold for myself, because I am a libertarian and I respect that everybody, lives their lives as they want, as long as they don't mess with someone else. So I do live in that duality, and it has served me in order to, communicate in between the two movements, and also make my message across in Latin America, because in Latin America we're struggling still with the fact that free market movements are polluted with crony capitalists, with mercantilists, with a protectionist
Gloria,
mentality.
Gloria, but I want to get to that in 1 second. I just wanted to ask you one question before that.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me that we've been reading Human Action on this channel again, and I've been proposing to my sister, who doesn't know anything about this, is her first time reading the book. I've been trying to basically explain to her that one of the things that was missing in Human Action is the kind of like what the objectivists hold more important. I see economics and ethics to be two sides of the same coin, and they're kind of you can't separate them apart. And I think that's more Randian in that sense, because she started with what should you do, and then everything
Yes.
else from that follows. So I just wanted to see if you agree that, like, I was telling my sister that praxeology is quote unquote value free science. It doesn't care what your aims are. It just
Yep.
analyzes the relationship between the means and the ends that you're seeking. But I told her that even when you start talking about two egos, you and I, if we want to do an exchange, we have to have a theory of property rights and ownership. And so that takes us directly to ethics. So I see that it's kind of completely interlinked. And so I think that that's like the important, that's where we now meet as an objectivist and a Misesian or whatever. Is like, I think that the obvious next move for the people from the Mises Institute and everything is to just fully embrace and say, yes, ethics and praxeology, or ethics and economics, are the same thing. And it's really the Austrians, it's the Austrian school, not the Austrian school of economics, but it's just the Austrian school, which should encompass this idea of free market economics, but also libertarianism. And I like that, what you just said, with the angle of be your own hero, be the best that you can be. And it does matter whether you end up having success or not. And you should treat life with a sense of urgency and all that,
Right.
because it's the ethically right thing to do. I wanted to see, we agree on that?
Absolutely. And the way I see it, it's like, if you see a tree, and that's why I have been discussing in this series of exploring objectivism. Let's say that objectivism gives you the roots. It goes all the way to metaphysics to explain why is reality real, and you have to come to the conclusion that there are things that you cannot change, and there are things that you can change. And all communism, fascism, all these authoritarian regimes, they are obsessed with changing things that cannot be changed. For instance, human nature, which intrinsically is selfish, which is not something bad as long as you understand that everybody else has the right to be selfish. So if we have that as a root in the tree, objectivism puts the root, and then you have this the core that goes to the different branches, where Austrian economics brings that relationship that you were talking about, the means and the ends. And then you have alternatives, anarcho-capitalism, minarchism, even like crazy things that I don't understand. Like, for example, conservative Catholics in Latin America who declare themselves anarcho-capitalists, but at the same time, they condemn abortion. So I don't get how in their world they would have a force that will forbid abortion from happening. But that exists as well.
Well, let's talk about this. This is interesting. This is actually a place where I also wanted to get to. Do you agree? I see that Latin America actually has the potential, because of their Catholic roots, to be a powerhouse in this libertarian way of thinking. And I've been trying to talk to my sister about that, because I'm a fan of St. Thomas Aquinas, and I believe that right now a lot of people are using Catholic history to try to say that they don't agree with free market economics, because things like, for example, interest are illegitimate. They call it usury, and they say it's illegitimate. But when you really read the Catholic position as described by St. Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica, he basically says that no, actually, that's not what we're talking about. Actually, interest is a natural phenomenon, and yes, it's perfectly ethical to do. So, um, so you were mentioning that there are Catholics in Latin America that call themselves anarcho-capitalists, and that but they are against abortion. And you're saying that
Mhm.
there's a contradiction there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, not a contradiction, but how would they enforce abortion being illegal in a world where there's no government that serves their interests? And I would love to think, I hope that someday Catholicism in Latin America would go back to Thomas Aquinas. But the history of Catholicism in Latin America, sadly, has been more an ally of socialism of the 21st century, of La Teología de la Liberación, which basically was an alliance between the Marxist guerrillas that started in all Latin America, and there were a lot of priests, preaching communism and socialism, and also the fact that poverty is seen as a virtue. That is something that Catholicism hasn't rooted all over Latin America. And of course, it started with the Spanish crown um, importing a model that was anything but free market. Spain had like this mercantilism, protectionism, where everything was controlled through the Consejo de Indias. And the reason why that monopoly was so successful is because it was endorsed by Catholicism, converting people here, saying like, no, you have to go this way. This is the way that is going to take you to heaven. So a lot of the view that poverty is a virtue in itself, that the rich is are mean, and interest is immoral, actually comes from that Catholic mentality that sometimes is completely separated. Like, there's a Catholicism of John Paul II, who was an anti-communist, and of course Thomas Aquinas, who basically grabbed Aristotle and meshed it with Christianity. That's one Catholicism. But then there's the other Catholicism that has always been in the side of collectivism,
Yeah.
and not only of economic liberties, but of all liberties.
Yes. But
But yeah,
yeah, I see that there's those two sides, but the other reason that I think that Catholics in particular, like, why are all the scholars in the Mises Institute Catholic and not another particular religion? I find it to be like
right.
that foundation in Aquinas, but and also, well, I guess going on with Aquinas, that basically he creates that distinction that says um, Aristotelian thinking applies to everything that you can figure out objectively in the world, and then when we talk about religion, that's a different realm of thought, and we don't separate it. We call it faith. Where for example, just to give an example, I had this debate with this guy. Maybe you've heard of him, Jay Dyer. He's an Orthodox Christian, and he's very popular now on YouTube. And the Orthodox Christianity is actually becoming very popular amongst certain fringe alt-right groups and stuff like that. And they have
Yeah.
they think that they can prove the existence of God using the same type of justifications that we use for praxeology or for objectivist thinking, which is to create axioms that are undeniable and then logically build from there. So basically, we regress as far as we can, and then we find where the first
Okay.
value is or where the first idea is, and then build from that. And anyway, I had a debate about that where
Right.
I think I proved my point that that you can't mix the two because, for example, I'm Catholic, but I can't use logic and evidence to prove the existence of God. I can't say like God is an undeniable truth in the same way that I say praxeology is undeniably true. So in theory, I should say, I would say, I've had this, we talk about this on the show, which is that I would say uh, God cannot act because acting implies dissatisfaction. And as God, you're a perfect being, so you can't be in a state of dissatisfaction where you get better by employing means, scarce means to attain definite ends. So
Right.
um,
Hmm.
that argument, that praxeology, if you were to try to use logic and reason, would disprove the existence of God. Nevertheless, as a Catholic, I don't find a contradiction in that because my particular religion says that's a different realm. That's the realm of faith. We openly admit that we don't use logic and reason in that particular thing, but we use, whatever, the divine revelation and other things that we agree with. So
Right.
anyway, my whole point was to say that I think the Catholics have the ability to be um, the good libertarians in that, because they don't mix and match the two things. And it's I as a Catholic, I don't find any problem with objectivist ethics, or even Rothbard's ethics of liberty and natural property
But
rights
but
law or theory.
but let me ask you something. As a Catholic, do you support free markets in markets like prostitution or drug legalization, or the market of voluntary selling your organs, but voluntarily, not like in China, that is a disaster? Are you comfortable with the idea of those markets being free, or would you rather have the state remain them illegal because that is more comfortable with what Catholicism, inspires in society?
Well, I'm not a Catholic scholar, but based on the things that you said, it doesn't seem like those are
Mhm.
actionable state enforceable things. Those are definitely in the religion, they would be seen as immoral, but not necessarily something that one needs to go out and actually stop. I'm not sure that there's a dogma that says
Yeah.
that you can do that in the Catholic religion, but you can, if you know better than me, you can definitely correct me on that.
No,
But
no, no. No, by saying that, I think that you're my kind of Catholic. I hope that we had more Catholics like you all over Latin America, because what's going on, and this is why I think socialism of the 21st century has been so successful, is because in the conservative side of the spectrum, you find people who, although they want free markets, it's only in the markets that they feel comfortable with. So in topics that are, very sensitive for the young people now, LGTB rights, drug legalization, especially because of the narco violence and the narco politics. In this side of the spectrum, no one wants to talk about that. It's just like, no, that should remain illegal. And when you like question them in the Socratic method, you will find that the reason to maintain it illegal has nothing to do with data. Even if you prove to them that there will be less crime, less corruption, and even, more lives saved if these markets are legal, at the end it's like, no, this should remain illegal, and the reason is more dogmatic than something rational. That has been my experience with the conservative Catholic movement in Latin America in general, and also with, because they are very concerned with what they call, well, what we call cultural Marxism, right? This like brilliant, cruel but brilliant strategy that communists and socialists have made of, because now they cannot go through the world selling communism, to at least to, commonsensical people that understood the Berlin Wall and all of that. What they have done in Latin America is that the left has grabbed the flags of environment, women's rights, gender equality, LGBT rights, drug legalization. So young people are persuaded into going to that spectrum of the political atmosphere, because on the other side, conservatives just don't want to talk about it. They just don't want to include it in their plans and their agenda. Even if you show them that by being legal, it's going to be more efficient and less corrupt. So yeah, I hope that there are more Catholics like you.
yeah, well, I think you kind of answered the thing. So, and I'm trying to live my life the way that I would want other people to live. Um, I think the problem there is that you have Catholics who believe in, they're even stronger in their beliefs and their convictions from the about the Catholic dogma. And but what happens is that you just gave them a weapon called the state, and so they're trying to enforce their ideas.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm a Catholic anarcho-capitalist, because I would never, because I can see that I can see where that kind of leads. Once you've got the power, once there's a gun in the room and you've got control of the gun, I could see how that power can corrupt absolutely, so to speak. So, so that's why I would encourage you to become an anarcho-capitalist too. uh, then you don't have to worry about that stuff. But anyway, but um, so Latin America has a lot of work to do. Obviously, like I don't know how is the state of Guatemala right now? Is it politically more conservative, or it's politically more liberal, or where's it go? Where's it headed right now?
What we always have had is crony mercantilism.
Yeah.
We had one government of aligned with socialism of the 21st century and photo of Sao Paulo, and they did, some measures that were leaning us to Venezuela, but it didn't take a toll on the long run. No, Guatemala is more of like a crony mercantilist, very conservative government where protectionism is implemented for the oligarchies. Um, and there's a lot of informal economy. 70% of the economy is informal, so it's always the few people paying taxes to support that government. And then inside the government, the logic goes more Marxist. If you go to education and health, they are run by the Marxist and Keynesian mentality that you have to have a union, and that union is the one that receives all the funds, and basically they steal 93% of those funds, and that's why schools and hospitals are third world schools and hospitals. And when you talk about like the voucher system, oh no, then you are a demon because you want to privatize, and what a capitalist horrible mentality.
Yeah, well, I think that I think they'll probably take a cue from the United States. A lot of these countries have started to change now and gone for this populist government thing.
Yeah.
United States, Poland, Hungary, the UK, Mexico. I don't know about any South American countries, but that's step number one, I think, in the kind of disillusionment in the government, and people they don't really believe it in anymore.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see what'll happen in Guatemala. So let me ask you. So what do you do? We have these very totalitarian governments. Well, as an anarcho-capitalist, they're all totalitarian, right? But
Yes.
But we have these governments that are making us do all kinds of things. Maybe they're enforcing quarantine in Guatemala too.
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. So what do you do to live your life in a practical libertarian way? Like when you put on a mask, do you like say to yourself, well, I'm doing this to protect my health, but not because they're telling me, but because or do you not wear a mask and say, well, fuck the government, I'm not going to, if they tell me that there's a disease, I'm automatically going to think that they're lying to me? Or how do you live your life in a free way on a daily basis? Like if you have any suggestions for the audience of how to do that?
Well, actually, I am living in Mexico, which has not implemented a really hardcore quarantine as the one in Guatemala. In Guatemala, we had curfew at 4 p.m. People couldn't go out in the weekends. There were also like restrictions on who could go in their cars to circulate freely. They closed the borders. They closed the airport. It's insane. Also, Peru and Argentina and Ecuador.
Well, the only time I went to Mexico City, I was driving a car with an American license plate and got pulled over by the dirty cops because of the last the number. They said it didn't finish on the right number.
Yes.
So they stopped. They don't allow people to drive on any given day either in Mexico City.
Well,
at least
sometimes they lie to you, because that has also happened. They go and they say, oh, today's Friday, and your car ends at 9, so you cannot circulate. And you're like, where is the law that says that, right? And so, yeah, Mexico is super corrupt in that sense. But not because of, that is that has been implemented because of traffic and pollution here.
Yeah.
The quarantine. So in Mexico, we had what they call the lights, like red light, yellow light, green light. Right now we are in a mixing between yellow and green light. We never had a curfew. What I do in these cases is I go to science. And so what is the only thing that can protect you from a virus? A healthy immune system. There's nothing else. It's inside of you. Nothing else. Not Trump, not anybody's gonna save you from coronavirus the same way that your immune system. What do you do to put your immune system up? Well, you go to the nature, you do exercise, you start eating healthier, you eat vitamins. And so what I do is like, okay, if these are the recommendations of the government, I will abide until the point that it goes against what science is teaching me and what is common sense and healthy for myself. And because of this, I, for example, have been reading that people who have blood type O negative, we apparently are more, we're safer from getting coronavirus than,
I'm O negative.
well, and for me as well, because we don't have the pathogens that A and B blood have. And apparently that's where like the coronavirus hits in. So then you go like, okay, so that's an advantage. Maybe I have been in contact with people with the virus and I haven't gotten it. That's a possibility. So what I do is that mix. Of course, not like, I don't know if I would have been in Guatemala that I would on purposely be breaking the law, because also what are you gonna do outside when the whole city is closed? You know what I mean?
Is it closed? Is the whole city closed?
It was absolutely closed until 2 weeks ago. Guatemala had one of the worst quarantines, almost 4 months, where no one could open except if you were a restaurant that could do delivery and a pharmacy and hospital.
Wow. Wow. And Mexico City?
No, Mexico City was more like civil society taking responsibility of self quarantine. And then eventually the government said no public reunions of more than 150 people. And so that's when restaurants decided
150 people?
100 or 50 people. Like they
Oh,
went,
100.
yeah.
Of course, because like a Mexican wedding, it's minimum like 50 people, if not 100 people. I mean, that's a small one, actually.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
So it was more of like the spontaneous order, a function,
Yes.
and the restaurant saying, okay, then I won't open, because then you take the risk of getting sued or getting in trouble because someone get the coronavirus in your establishment. So there was also that. And I think that one of the worst mistakes was putting like if they were equals, social distancing with closing the economy. I don't think they are. I think that you can have social distancing with a perfect functioning economy like Sweden showed, and Iceland and Uruguay. And also I think that the governments and also civil society didn't do enough of a job to remind people that their immune system is their only weapon towards coronavirus.
Well, immune system, I'm not an expert, but immune system, and then they say viral load. So how much virus gets into you. So in that sense,
Yeah.
a mask might be a good thing. Again, I don't know necessarily, but a mask might be a good thing for that if you don't want to get all the particulates at one moment, right?
Yeah, and that's what I did with the mask. Like I started testing, like blowing on them, like, oh, okay, so this actually protects you. Let's wear it, you know? Yeah.
But you know what's really and this is relevant to this particular channel, is what really scares me more than the virus is the economic consequences of shutting everything down by force.
Right.
I could see a world where if it was truly the pandemic that they're claiming it is, I could see a world where older people voluntarily choose to stay at home while younger people run the economy and keep things moving. But when they just indiscriminately tell everybody to stay home, oh man, I mean, I just went to New York. I used to live in New York City. And what I just saw was not the city that I lived in. It literally felt like going into Chernobyl, because arriving at 3 a.m, that city never sleeps, or they never used to sleep. And there was literally no one on the streets. It was like the eerie thing. But even during the day, walking during the day, there's people there, but everyone's wearing masks and everyone's trying to keep their distance. And it literally feels like some sort of biological weapon was dropped on the city. and you know, and then you start judging people that stayed behind. You know, I actually left a year before any of this happened, but I start to judge people that stayed behind. I'm like, I don't know what you think is going to happen, but I mean, it's some of the oldest institutions are closing, and they're not. I had a restaurant. My family had a restaurant there, and it's still open. One of our partners continued to keep it open, but it's not looking good at all.
Yeah.
So I mean, how long do you think? What's your entrepreneurial prediction? How bad do you think it's going to get?
I mean, I think that the losses are unmeasurable. What I like about informal economy is that at least in the poorest countries of Latin America, people went back to the markets. Some of them taking measures, some not. But I say, okay, that's good that those are markets that cannot be controlled by the government, that they are outside the dream of an anarcho-capitalist. But it's a survival economics. It's an economics of living one day at a time. The losses for people who do abide by the laws, I think that are unmeasurable. I mean, Argentina, for example, right now just dropped like 10 points in the index of economic freedom. The same
Wow.
Guatemala. The losses in Mexico this year, it's like the PIB per capita lower than in the 70s. So things that really we are not, because we're also in our homes, or even if we go out, we're not relating with everyone. We don't have a clear picture on how bad things are, right?
You know who has a good chance of maybe in the future doing better, but I don't know their culture very well. But
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela has been so messed up for so many years that they, I'm not sure how much you hear about it in Mexico City, but they have really embraced Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and they're doing a lot of their, like you said, informal economy. They're using cryptocurrencies now.
Yeah.
So if they get in early, they get it cheap, and if they get it cheap, they could be running Latin America in the future, not Mexico, but actually Venezuela. Who know? I mean, these kind of things can happen, but only if the people really want it. If they're hopelessly in love with Marxism, then forget it.
I hope that happens. I mean, Venezuela is the Holocaust of the 21st century, you know. It's like at the eternal concentration camp, the Walking Dead. They were ready for this quarantine 15 years ago, because they already know what it is to be, you know, inside of your house, not going out after 5 p.m. because you get shot, not having food because there's a scarcity, not having electricity, not having drinkable water. I did a podcast with some guys in Venezuela, and I was like, are you kidding me, guys? You are the ones that, you are the real preppers. You were preparing for disaster from a long time ago. I
Right.
hope that now that other people are having a taste of socialism,
Yeah, yeah.
stop using you guys as an example as to where should we lead. Sadly, I think that there still has to be. I mean, how many people have died in Venezuela? Students protesting for years, people starving in the street, people eating from trash, and it has not been enough. So I don't know how much damage the
I
coronavirus
know.
has to cause for like a massive rebellion. And then the other thing is, you don't have a real opposition in Venezuela.
Yeah,
Everybody's a socialist,
yeah,
from
yeah.
to the opposition. So in the elites that should, you know, like Mises says, in the anti-capitalist mentality, at the end is the elites, the ones that are always pushing for the anti-free market ideas. And that's the problem in Venezuela, along also with the fact that you have a generation that is in malnutrition, and that has had the worst education system for the past 20
Mm.
years. So you're going to have a lot of young people that don't know how to operate in a globalized world,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
I understand. Can we have you on for 10 more minutes? We started a little bit late. Are
Oh,
you pressed for
actually,
time?
I have another Zoom.
Okay.
uh,
Let me
it-
ask
yeah,
let
yeah.
me okay, let me ask you really quick. I loved you in that debate that you had with the other women, with, like, I think it was Marxism versus capitalism.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what your opinions are after that debate? It was a really great debate.
Thank you.
Can you just finish up on that?
Oh yeah, well, so as an individualist, regardless of what's your gender, I do believe in individual rights, and that includes women, men, and whatever. And that debate was about how free market has been the reason for oppression of women, and I was like, no, actually other things have oppressed women: culture, church, state, machismo, misogynia, like other psychological, anthropological, and social explanations for the oppression of women. I'm not here as those people who deny that women were oppressed. No, let's call things as what they were. We couldn't access private property. We couldn't decide who our husband was going to be. We basically passed always from like our fathers to our husbands, and then to the grave. But if we are going to call on the true oppressors of women, we have to praise free markets for being the actual liberators of women, because it is through free markets that women can access, first of all, economic independence. And if you are economic independent, then you can stand up in your own feet with dignity and put a stop to domestic violence, to machismo, to misogynia, and to unequal treatment. And second, all the battles that women fought for getting a right to vote, for getting rights for private property, custody of their children, opening a bank account, were possible only after the Industrial Revolution, where women could have certain technologies that are primitive for today's standards, but that were crucial for them getting away of their houses. So it was because of free markets that women have leisure time in order to start thinking and say, wait a second, maybe we are not as dumb as men think we are, and as us women think we are. And now we have time in order to fight for those rights. So thank for capitalism for bringing us from contraceptive pills to, Tampax, to makeup, medicine, and everything it has given to emancipate women from the only role that she had throughout the entire history. And of course, if you portray it like that, it is impossible that the other side doesn't recognize it. Like oppression exists, but it didn't come from free markets.
Yeah, great. So that's an excellent note to end on. Capitalism wins again.
Yeah.
Well, Gloria, thank you very much. We recommend that everybody follows her. She's going to have a very exciting career ahead of her. And thank you very much for joining us.
It was a pleasure. Nice to meet you. See
Thank
you.
you, Gloria.
Bye.
Bye-bye.